Attention bowlers, we are going to get started from Lakeside Lanes at Manchester, New Hampshire. This is the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. My name is Steve Kelly, and I will be your host and guide during this Class D North doubleheader match between today's challengers, Kevin Martel and Jonathan Hogan. That is Jonathan Hogan at Kevin Martel and Bryan Hebert versus Bill Olson in the season finale for these four bowlers here at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. We are starting out with a head-to-head match tonight. We have Jonathan Hogan and Kevin Martel on lanes 9 and 10 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Kevin Martel shooting for a 10 box, and he goes for a 9 box right out the outside, leaving the head pin. Jonathan Hogan, meanwhile, for an 8 box. Starting right off the bat and wasting no time. So, folks, good as always to have you along with us. Originally live streamed on this Friday evening, May 3rd at around 6:45 p.m. and available for rewatching anytime upon the conclusion of this match. If you're new to the ACST or Candlepin Bowling in general, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you and hope you enjoy this match and Candlepin Bowling as a whole. That's a 9 drop for Kevin Martel, by the way, and Jonathan Hogan with a misfire to the left on the 10 pin. And if you're a returning viewer, of course, welcome back, and your continued viewership is greatly appreciated. Kevin Martel is shooting for the single pin spare on the 3 pin, and he just misses it by a hair. Jonathan Hogan, meanwhile, is looking at a 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 box opportunity now. That's Kevin Martel on the right, shooting for the 10. He gets his 10. First 10 of the match for Kevin Martel. Jonathan Hogan releases, and he's off target for a 6 box for 14 after 2. Here we are right at the start of this doubleheader. This is a 5-game match series. And you've only missed 2 boxes if you're just tuning in. For those interested, I would like to highlight 2 things. First, this broadcast will be available with subtitles and live captioning. I will also be providing audible descriptions of the play-by-play action as well as scoring to the best of my ability. If you have any questions or suggestions, please let me know in the comments. That's an 8 drop for Kevin Martel, the 4 and the 7 pins on the deck. He's shooting for a spare. Meanwhile, Jonathan Hogan is shooting at the 1, the 2, the 4, the 9, and the 10 pins for a spare. Kevin Martel misses his spare. Jonathan Hogan shooting for his spare. And he takes 2 out, leaving 3 for the road. And he'll be going for a 10 box remedial ball. Kevin Martel will take a 9 meanwhile. And Jonathan Hogan will clean up for a 10, checking 10, 24 after 3. For Jonathan Hogan, Kevin Martel is sitting at 28 after 3. Kevin Martel dropping 7. Sorry, I had to just adjust the main wide camera because Jonathan Hogan is just so dang tall, and Bill Olson, who is yet to bowl, is also very tall, so I figured I'd fix that issue right now before we continue any further. Kevin Martel for the spare, and it goes! Very slow-moving, methodical spare by Kevin Martel. First mark of the match. Credit goes to Kevin Martel and Jonathan Hogan chopping wood out there, leaving the 6 and the 10 on the deck. Shooting for a 10 box now, and he'll take a 9. He'll go halfway. 33 after 4 for Jonathan Hogan, 38 plus a ball for Kevin Martel. As always, the scoreboard on the stream should be considered unofficial. The official one is being kept separately by the bowlers. This one that you see on the stream is just me in the background trying to keep track and keep up with the bowlers. Kevin Martel with a 7 on his spare, leaving the what appears to be the 5, the 4, and the 10. I think a pin slid a little. That's why it's looking a little bit difficult to see. 45 after 4 for Kevin Martel. Jonathan Hogan dropped 5, 1, 3, 6, 7, 10. Kevin Martel, no second spare. He's left with the 5 and the 10. Right side setback. Jonathan Hogan misses his 4 horseman right side plus the 7 pin. Both bowlers will be shooting for 10 boxes now. Martel sails through the goalpost to the 5 and the 10 for an 8 box. Hogan, meanwhile, will take a 7 box. 40 after 5 for Jonathan Hogan. At least that's what the scoreboard should read on the up on the Compy score. It looks like the bowlers haven't updated that just yet, but 53 after 5 for Kevin Martel, meanwhile. There we go, 40 to 53. Bowlers have caught up with me. So we're saying hello to Bryan Hebert and Bill Olson for the first time this evening here on this Friday night, this quiet Friday night at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. That's Bill Olson on the right in the black shirt. Bill Olson, who is taller than I am, up in the 6-foot club. He drops 7. Bryan Hebert, meanwhile, not as tall, but that doesn't diminish anything. He takes a right side half Worcester. Bill Olson with a 7 drop. That's the 2, the 8, and the 10 pins on the deck. Shooting for spare. And he'll take 2 for the road. Not exactly a spare, but hey. So Bill Olson's left the 10 pin. Bryan Hebert, no spare either. He's left to the 1, 7, 10, 6. Both bowlers shooting for 10s. This is a head-to-head match tonight. So Bill Olson will take a 9 to open up with, and Bryan Hebert will open with an 8. Still in the first. Thanks for watching. Lakeside Lanes is located right off of exit 1 on 101 in Manchester, New Hampshire. I like to think of it as if you're going to UNH from 293 but decide to go bowling instead and veer off to the first exit you see on 101. The first right off of the Massabesic traffic circle after taking exit 1 on 101 and adjacent to Massabesic Lake. Lakeside Lanes is a humble 24-lane house comprised of all wood lanes and approaches. Lakeside Lanes opened on November 27th, 1959, and is nearly the same age as Lido Lanes at roughly 64 years and some change. And neither bowler has taken any spares here. Bill Olson is looking at the 2, 3, 6, and 10. Bryan Hebert with just the 1 and the 2. Olson will pin out for a 9. Hebert will take an 8. 16 after 2 for Hebert. 18 after 2 for Olson. Lakeside Lanes' website stated that rigid specifications of construction required that they be level to width of 40 out of 1,000th of an inch. So precise that saying the wood alone required more than a month's time. Lakeside Lanes has a soundproofing system in which 85% of all sound is absorbed. Tim Lipke is the owner of Lakeside Lanes. His son Shane Lipke, and Bobby Greco do an amazing job keeping this place looking and feeling great. Tons of leagues, really fun and unique pools for things such as 4 strikes in a row, 50 over your average, and the orange pin pool. I'll explain the orange pin pool in a little bit. Bill Olson, meanwhile, with the 1-2-5, shooting for a spare, I believe. He's on the pocket, or on the head pin rather, but it dances around everything else. Bryan Hebert misses his object. Excuse me, they were shooting for 10 boxes. Olson with an 8, Hebert with a 9. Hebert for 25 after 3. Olson for 26 after 3. Fairly tight match. Olson and Hebert are 1 pin apart. Kevin Martel and Jonathan Hogan are 13 pins apart after their first half of the first game. Olson fires. Play action. Drops 6. 2, 4, 7, 9. Hebert fires. Play action. Off the left of the head pin, taking out the 4, the 7, and the 8. Both bowlers shooting for spares now. This is the second ball, the spare ball. Spare leave, the spare offer. And Olson, that offer is accepted for a spare, his first spare of the match. Hebert, not on the pocket, but takes a few out for the road. That's a spare for Olson, 36 plus a ball. Hebert shooting for a 10 box, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. He's on the pocket, a little bit too full, takes out 2, leaves 2 for an 8 box. That's 33 after 4 for Bryan Hebert, and that's 36 plus a ball after 4 for Bill Olson. Bill Olson filling a spare now. And a wild pitch by Bill Olson, unfortunately. That is a goose egg of a fill. So he will sit at 36 after 4. Opportunity missed there. So Bill Olson's second ball. Hebert dropping 6, 1, 5, 3, 6 on the deck. Olson's second ball, much better, drops 6, leaves the 4 horsemen right side. Hebert checks a spare. Trading blows, trading marks. That's Hebert's first mark of the match. Olson will clean up for a 10. That's the end of the first half for these bowlers in this game. 43 plus a ball for Bryan Hebert and 46 for Bill Olson at the 5. Welcoming back Kevin Martel and Jonathan Hogan, neither bowlers on any marks. Jonathan Hogan's at 40 after 5, and Kevin Martel's at 53 after 5. You're watching the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, this Class D North doubleheader, the season finale for these 4 bowlers in D North Division 4. We have Jonathan Hogan on lane 10. He fires a little bit too full on the head pin for a 6, 7, 10 split with no wood to help him. Kevin Martel, meanwhile, Drops 7, possibly 8. Let's see if more fall. The head pin falls. He's left with the 3 and the 10. Hogan for a spare. Not much he can do. He takes a stick out, leaving the 6 and the 7. Martel has a 2-pin spare opportunity on the 3 and the 10. Throws it light, and that pays off for him. He takes a spare. That's another spare for Kevin Martel. Jonathan Hogan checks 8. For 48 after 6, 63 plus a ball after 6 for Mr. Kevin Martel. This is a head-to-head doubleheader match tonight. Currently watching Jonathan Hogan with a season record of 153 and 85. You may have saw on the slide that record is different. That was my mistake. I had a typo. There's always at least one typo somewhere. His actual record is 153 and 85 with 17 matches bowled. His home record is 80 and 46 with a 1.74 win-loss ratio. Jonathan Hogan's away record is 73 and 39. That's a 1.87 win-loss ratio. He's bowled 9 matches at home and 8 matches away. And Jonathan Hogan is staring down a broken spread eagle, the 2, 3, 4, 6, 10. Kevin Martel misses a spare, leaving the 1 and the 8 pins on the deck. Jonathan Hogan takes one more stick out, leaving 4 pins on the deck. And Martel will take a 9. 6 for Jonathan Hogan. And 9 for Kevin Martel. And the fill on that spare was a 5. 77 after 7 for Kevin Martel. And 54 after 7 for Jonathan Hogan. Jonathan Hogan fires. He's off the head to the right, washing out the right side of the deck. We have Kevin Martel on the left on lane 9. He drops 8. 5-10 setback, right side. Jonathan Hogan for the left side washout spare leave with an orange pin head pin. And will he get it? Will the 5-pin go? The 5-pin is glued to the ground. Wiggles a little but doesn't go down. Should write haikus or something. Kevin Martel for the spare. He's off to the right of the 5-pin, leaving the 5-pin, taking the 10-pin out. Both pins with a 5-pin 10 box. Hogan fires. Throws that one away for a 9 box. Martel for his 5-pin 10 box. He misses it as well. Both bowlers mirroring each other with dueling 9 boxes. 63 after 8 for Jonathan Hogan. 86 after 8 for Kevin Martel. And they have 2 boxes to go before they sit. Kevin Martel with a season record of 110 and 128 with 17 matches played. Kevin Martel's home record is 65 and 47. That's a 1.38 win-loss ratio across 8 matches. Martel's away record is 45 and 81 with a 0.56 win-loss ratio across 9 matches. Jonathan Hogan drops 9 with a 6-pin to deal with. And will he take it? He will. It's a mark for Jonathan Hogan, the first of the match for him. Kevin Martel, a bit more of a difficult shot. He's left with the banana split, the 4, 6, 7, 10 on the deck. And he's shooting for a 10 box now. Kevin Martel, he will finish with a 7 box. And where does that leave us? That puts Jonathan Hogan at 73 plus a ball after 9, and we have Kevin Martel at 93 after 9. Kevin Martel's season average is 97.5. That's 18th in D class. Compare that to Jonathan Hogan's average of 101.99. That's 6th in D class. So Kevin Martel is David challenging Goliath here. That's a 5 fill on, 7 fill on Jonathan Hogan's spare. Tracking 2 bowlers at once is interesting. He takes one more out for the road, leaving the left side setback 5-7. And Kevin Martel, meanwhile, chops out one more for the road. The 2, the 6, the 9, and the 10 are what he has to shoot at for a 10 box. And Jonathan Hogan will take an 8 box. Kevin Martel, meanwhile, is going to take 2 more out for the road for an 8 box as well, and that is the conclusion of the first game for our 2 bowlers in the first pair. Jonathan Hogan finishes with an 88 in the first, and Kevin Martel will finish with a 101 in the first. Kevin Martel has secured 2 points in the first game. But meanwhile, we are going to say hello once again to Bryan Hebert and Bill Olson, swapping lanes. As is tradition, we have Bryan Hebert on the right on lane 10. Bryan Hebert leads off. His season record after 17 matches is 110 and 128. He has a home record of 54 and 72. That's a .75 win-loss ratio across 9 matches. And away, Hebert has 8 matches at 56 and 56, which is a perfect 1.0. And Hebert chops out a few more, the 1.357. Bill Olson takes a few more out for the road himself. That's a 7, 8, 9, or 10 box opportunity for him. And Hebert staring down the pins, thinking about his next shot. And Hebert will take it 7 box, looks like. Actually, there was a sleeper pin behind the head pin. 7 box for Hebert. 7 box for Hebert with a 3 fill on the spare, that is. And Olson will take an 8 box. 53 to 54. Bryan Hebert, 53. Bill Olson, 54. After 6 frames. Hebert winds up. And he drops 9. That approach was interesting. He kind of took a step backwards, almost looks like. He took an extra step, and it looked like it helped out. He's left with only the 7 pin. Meanwhile, Bill Olson washes out the far left side, just the 4, the 7, and the 8 pins, and Bryan Hebert will secure his single pin spare. Difficult shot for some bowlers. Bill Olson, for his spare shot, takes out a few more. He's left with just the 4 horsemen right side for a 10 box. Remedial salvage mission for Bill Olson. Bill Olson for the 10 box. He runs him down. That's a 10 box for Bill Olson. Excellent cleanup. Bill Olson at 64 after 7. And Bryan Hebert at 63 plus a ball after 7. Bryan Hebert filling a spare now. He fires to the right of the head pin, but gets a generous leave. 1, 2, 4, 5. It's a 6 fill. Bill Olson chops 1 out. It's a right side lemon drop on the 6 pin. Hebert for the spare leave. Spare opportunity. Takes a few more out. And it goes. He steals it. That's another spare for Hebert. Pins fall late and fall slow. Doesn't matter how you get it. You'll take a cheap one if you can get it. Bill Olson working on a 10 box. 1, 2, 4. Olson releases, and he's going to take 2, leaving the orange pin head pin for a 9 box. That's 73 after 8 for Bill Olson and 79 plus a ball in the 8th for Bryan Hebert now. Bill Olson, after 17 matches this season, has a record of 138 and 100. Bill Olson has a home record of 73 and 39 with a 1.87 win-loss ratio across 8 matches. Bill Olson has an away record of 65 and 51. That's a 1.27 win-loss ratio across 9 matches. Hebert with an 8 fill on his spare with the left side set back 5-10. Olson drops 6. Hebert trying to get his 3rd spare in a row, but can't quite get it. He's left with the 5-7. 5-7. And Bill Olson takes 2 out and leaves 2 up. Hebert will take an 8 box. Surrenders that one. Bill Olson will also monkey see, monkey do. 8 for both. 95 and 9 for Bryan Hebert. 81 and 9 for Bill Olson. It's a pleasure having you along with us, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, on Candlepin Bowling Network or the ACST Facebook page, or YouTube Live. However you came across this stream, I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you're watching. This is the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, the end of the regular season for these 4 bowlers tonight. Class D North, folks. Class D. Class D for destruction. Class D for demolition. Class D for domination. Class D for dastardly. Class D for all the fun adjectives. 6-10 for Bryan Hebert. He's shooting 4 now. I believe that's for a 10 box. Bill Olson, the 4-6-10. Hebert sails into the right side channel. Nothing there for him. Looks like it's going to be an 8 box. And Bill Olson will settle for a 7 box. And at the end of the first game, we can tally everything up. We are at 103 and 88. Bryan Hebert takes the second game. Bryan Hebert takes the first game. He takes 2 points against Bill Olson's 88. So Jonathan Hogan at 88, Kevin Martel 101. Kevin Martel taking the first game. Bryan Hebert taking the first game, 103 to Bill Olson's 88. We'll be welcoming back Kevin Martel and Jonathan Hogan to the approaches of Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Thank you for watching. Welcome to the second game of this 5-game series. Kevin Martel with the right side half Worcester taking out the 3, and the 9. We have Jonathan Hogan taking out just the 7-pin, the 7-pin alone. Spare leaves for both of our bowlers in this next round here. Kevin Martel with a light ball on the head pin. It seemed to work out for him, but he's left with the 5 and the 7 with no wood. That's a left side setback. Jonathan Hogan off to the right of the head pin this time. He takes a few more out for the road. The 1, 2, 4, 9, and 10 are on lane 9 for him to shoot for a 10 box. Kevin Martel's 10 box attempt will result in an 8 box. Jonathan Hogan, meanwhile, shooting for a 10 box as well. He's going to take an 8 box all the same. 8 after 1 for both of our bowlers. Jonathan Hogan's home average is 102.4. His home lanes are Lakeside lanes. Academy lanes in Haverhill, Massachusetts. I was just at Academy lanes recently, and I'm getting the two confused. Martel dropping 7, 2, 4, 6. Jonathan Hogan heard an audible never want to hear an but he got a generous consolation prize of pins. The 1, the 3, and the 7 are what he has to shoot at for a spare. Kevin Martel with a more difficult spare leave. And he sails through the middle between the 2 and the 6 pins. Jonathan Hogan versus the 1, 3, 7, and he will get it for a spare. Jonathan Hogan with a spare on the board. First one of this game for him. Kevin Martel shooting for a 10 box. And it will be a 7. Jonathan Hogan's away average is 101.4. Kevin Martel with a home average of 97.6 and an away average of 97.5. He drops 7 very slowly. Jonathan Hogan on the head pin this time, leaving, the Matt Susi special, the 5, 7, 10 with no wood to help him. Kevin Martel is shooting at the 1, the 2, and the 10 with a bunch of wood around it. Not necessarily helpful, but maybe comforting. And the wood actually almost helps him there, but the head pin remains for a spare shot. Jonathan Hogan shoots the 5 and takes only the 5 out. Martel is shooting for a 10 box. And it will be a 9 box for Martel. Jonathan Hogan will take an 8 box after that 7 fill. 33 after 3 for Jonathan Hogan, 24 after 3 for Kevin Martel. Here, Lakeside lanes on lane 10. Martel fires. Play action. Pin still falling. Drops everything but the 5 pin. Jonathan Hogan will left to the head pin, but gets some generous deck action, leaving the 1 and the 6 pins on the deck. Both bowlers have decent spare leave opportunities. Martel's single pin spare on the 5 pin is successful. That's a spare for Martel. Hogan's spare. I heard another The wood generously takes out one of the 2 pins, but he's left with just the head pin. It's going to be for a 10 box now for Jonathan Hogan. And it's going to be a 9 box for Hogan. Hogan's at 42 after 4. Martel is at 34 plus a ball after 4. At this point in the match, Martel leads the match total by 5. Hogan is up in the game by 8. And Martel will fill his spare with 6. Hogan, meanwhile, dropping 6 as well. Martel that has the 3, the 4, the 6, and the 7 pins to shoot at. Somewhat around, but not really helpful. He takes out only 1 of those 4 pins. Nothing really eventful there. Hogan versus the 7, 10, 1, 2. Connects with the 1, but lightly, leaving the 7 and the 10. 2 falls with the 1. Martel with the 3, the 4, and the 7 pins on the deck for a 10 box. Shooting for a 10 box. And he fires, and a piece of wood gets capped and goes in between the 4 and the 7. Jonathan Hogan, meanwhile, will go for the 7-10 cleanup 10, and he'll get it. It's a 7 for Martel and a 10 for Hogan. That should put us at approximately 52 after 5 for Jonathan Hogan and 47 after 5 for Kevin Martel. Martel up in the match by 8. Hogan up in the game by 5. Let's say hi to Bill Olson and Bryan Hebert once again. Bill Olson on the right on lane 10. Very tall individual in the black shirt. Very tall. The bane of many cameras, especially the cameras we set up tonight. Had to put him extra high up and even had to reposition him at least once tonight so far. Just for Bill Olson, he dropped 7. The 3, 7, 10, and Bryan Hebert washes out the far right side of the deck, the 6, 9, 10. Left with everything else. Bill Olson for a spare leave, 7, 10, 3. He releases, the ball is off to the right a little bit. Mercifully only takes out the 10 pin due to the wood. Bryan Hebert takes a few more out. He's left with the 2, the 4, and the 7 pins for a 10 box. Bill Olson's 10 box will result in a 9 box. His 10 box attempt, that is. Hebert for a 10, and he will clean up for a 10. 10 after 1 for Hebert, 9 after 1 for Olson. Thanks for watching. This is the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, Class D North doubleheader. We're at Lakeside Lanes tonight. Season finale of Bryan Hebert versus Bill Olson and Jonathan Hogan versus Kevin Martel. Bill Olson drops 7 rather quickly, leaving the 2, 4, 7. Bryan Hebert on the pocket, 5, 10, 8. Olson first spare. He releases. I heard an ah. The amount of times I've heard ah tonight, I would have pennies on the dollar. Bryan Hebert for his spare, and he's a little full on the piece of wood in front of the pins, and he's left with the 5-10. Bill Olson with the 2 and the 7. Olson fires on the 2, and he takes out only the 2. That's a 9 box for Olson. Hebert for an 8, 9, or 10. It's likely going to be a 9, my guess, but hey, I was wrong. It's an 8 box. 18 after 2 for Hebert, and 18 after 2 for Olson. If you're just tuning in, this is the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, a season-long series of one-on-one candlepin bowling matches between challengers organized into classes and divisions competing for playoff contention. That's Bill Olson on the right, washing out the left side. And then that's Bryan Hebert off the head pin, but with a generous leave, the 7 and the 10 pins are on the deck. Rather interesting drops here at Lakeside Lanes in the past week and a half. I think they might have polished up the decks and the sidewalls a little bit more action than normal, and the lanes are a little bit shinier than they have been, so I think the decks have been juiced, as they might have said at some place. This place isn't like Millis, Massachusetts, but the pins are flying a little bit more than they have been. So Hebert doesn't get his spare. He's left with a 7 pin, and Olson misses everything on his spare shot, or his 10 shot, excuse me. It's a 6 box for Bill Olson and a 9 box for Hebert. $27 after 3 for Hebert, $24 after 3 for Olson. Olson off to the left of the head pin, but generous action, generous bounces, generous sidewalls. Leaves the 1 and the 3 on the deck after an 8 drop. Hebert drops 6. The 1, the 8, the 6, and the 10 are what he has to shoot at. Bill Olson is shooting for a spare now. The 1 and the 3 pin's an orange pin. The orange pin pool at Lakeside Lanes is kind of fun. It's every league you're in, you put in $1 into the pool at the front desk before the league begins, and the way it works is there's an orange pin within the cluster of pins at every lane at Lakeside Lanes, and if the pin setter is so lucky to put down the orange pin as the head pin, and you get a strike or a spare while that orange pin is the head pin, you get entered into a raffle, and that is the orange pin pool at Lakeside Lanes. Bill Olson, that's a 9 box, and Hebert, that's an 8 box. 35 after 4 for Bryan Hebert, and 33 after 4 for Bill Olson. 1 to go before they sit. Bill Olson fires very straight ball, but a little bit too much to the left. Takes out the 7 and the 7 only for just 1 after 1. Hebert drops 5, washes out largely the right side. The 4 horsemen left side plus the 8 pins are on the deck. And Olson takes a few more out. The 1, 5, 3, 8, 9. Hebert for his spare shot is nearly successful, but he's left with the 4 and the 8. Both bowlers shooting for 10 boxes. Bill Olson right on the head pin, but Not quite full enough. A 7 box for Olson and a 9 box for Hebert. 44 after 5 for Hebert. 40 after 5 for Olson. Hebert is up in the match by 19 and up in the game by 4. We welcome back Jonathan Hogan and Kevin Martel to the approaches now for the second half of the second game. Hogan on lane 10 fires the tall individual in the green shirt on lane 10 at Lakeside Lanes. He drops 9 almost immediately, just the 7 pin with no wood. The wood rolls out into the channel. Kevin Martel with a half Worcester and a friend on the right side. Hogan single pin spare, he misses it. Same pin up, 7 pin, shooting for a 10. Kevin Martel takes a few more out for the road. 5 up, 5 down. Hogan for his 10 box, and he misses that. So Hogan will take a 9. Martel will take a 6. 61 after 6 for Jonathan Hogan, 53 after 6 for Kevin Martel. You're watching the ACST. I'm Steve Kelly. That's Kevin Martel, Jonathan Hogan, Bill Olson, and Bryan Hebert bowling tonight. Out on the lanes at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Thanks for watching, however you are, on YouTube or Facebook or Carrier Pigeon. I don't know how you're watching it, but if you are, thanks for watching. Both bowlers with interesting leaves here. Jonathan Hogan, both for a spare. Jonathan Hogan on his spare, and he takes some pins out. He's left with 3 up, 7 down. Martel with the 3, 6, 4, 7. Misses his spare as well. Hogan for a 7, 8, 9, or 10. Takes 7. Martel will take 1 more out for the road for 7. My apologies if I get any of these names mixed up tonight. Looking at the backs of their shirts, and somehow I'm getting a few of them mixed up from time to time, so if that happens, just bear in mind. Jonathan Hogan releases on the head pin, a little full, escapes the banana split, the 4, 7, 10, or what he has to shoot out for a spare. Kevin Martel, orange pin, head pin, he gets a right side half Worcester, taking out only the 3 and the 9. Hogan for a difficult spare shot now. And he's a little bit full in the wood, takes out only the 4, leaving the 7 and the 10. Martel for his half Worcester spare conversion, and he nearly gets it. He takes out everything but the 8 pin. I wouldn't have thrown it any differently. That was an excellent and beautiful pin action impact to watch. Jonathan Hogan will take an 8. 9 or 10 from Martel results in a 10 box. 76 after 8 for Jonathan Hogan, 70 after 8 for Kevin Martel. Jonathan Hogan, overall he leads D North Division 4 ahead of Bill Olson, Bryan Hebert, and Kevin Martel. He has held this position since at least November 20th of 2023. His overall place is the number 3 seed in D North. Hogan's high single was 142 versus Todd Holbrook in round 12. That was an away match. And his high series was 552 versus Bill Olson in round 16. That was a home match. Bill Olson with a gnarly 4 drop and then takes out the 7 pin. He's looking for a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. Kevin Martel for a spare, but he gets it. Cleans up the mess of pins that was down there. Couldn't even describe it before it disappeared. Jonathan Hogan will take an 8 box. 84 after 9 for Jonathan Hogan, 80 plus a ball for Kevin Martel. Kevin Martel has been bowling excellent tonight. Statistically, the odds are stacked against Kevin Martel, but he's been rising to the occasion. That's what we like to see in competition, folks. And we're going to be pausing for lane maintenance. As you probably saw, a piece of pin was scared down, as Jonathan Hogan said. If you're new to the ACST, here's the match format. It's a 5-string head-to-head match. Each game is worth 2 points apiece, and you get 4 points for the greater total pinfall at the end, and you get 2 if you tie. 1 pin if you tie, or 1 point if you tie a single individual game. It's an 18-match season. This is the 18th of 18 matches for these 4 bowlers in particular this season. Jonathan Hogan dropping 6. That's the 2, 4, 6, 10. Kevin Martel with the 2 and the 3 to shoot at. Jonathan Hogan hits the object pin, but doesn't have much to show for it. 3 still on the deck. 4, 6, 10. Kevin Martel, meanwhile, checks one out for the road. Not much more he could have done with that one. For 9 or 10 box. Jonathan Hogan for 79 or 10. Nearly gets the 10, but he takes a 9. So Martel had an 8 fill in that spare, and he'll take a 10 to conclude with a 98. Meanwhile, Jonathan Hogan will conclude with a 93. So Martel is currently 4-0 in terms of the points after taking the second game. Up in the total by 18 and takes the second game by 5. We welcome back Bryan Hebert and Bill Olson now. Bryan Hebert up by 19 in the total and 4 in the game. If we enter the game right now, Bryan Hebert would be 4-0 as well. Bryan Hebert. He fires. Not on a mark or anything. He drops 6. Olson. He fires. That's a right side half Worcester. Hebert for a 2, 4, 6, 10 split with no wood. Connects with the 2 and the 4, and that's all that goes. Olson, meanwhile, converting a right side half Worcester. Ball sails into the void. The void stares right back at him. That's the void of Worcester. Hebert for an 8, 9, or 10. Take a 10. Olson. We'll take a few more for the road. That's a 5 box. 45 after 6 for Olson. 54 after 6 for Bryan Hebert. Got Bryan Hebert on lane 10 in the dark blue shirt. The navy blue shirt, he drops 9 almost immediately, leaving the 5 pin and the 5 pin only. With a piece of wood in front of it, looks like an easy single pin spare. Bill Olson on the pocket as well, the 1-2 pocket. Dropping 7. Bill Olson, there's a pin rolling out of play. We're going to have to wait for that to be cleared. Bryan Hebert shoots for his spare, and he gets his spare while we wait. Spare for Hebert, 64 and a ball after 7. Kevin Martel checking to see if that piece of wood's good. It might actually still be good. We'll see. Let's see what the verdict ends up being. And it is out. One of those things where it was probably right on the line. There is a... You can't see it on the stream. You have to basically be physically down there, but there is a line that that the pin has to be either in front of or behind of to be considered in or out of play. And in this case, it seemed it was out of play, so it had to be removed. That's an object out of bounds. Bill Olson for his spare. He takes the object pin out, and that's the only pin that goes out. He's left with the 6 and the 7 on the deck. He's shooting for a 10 box now on lane 9 in Manchester, New Hampshire, Lakeside lanes. He'll pin it out for a 9. That puts Bill Olson at 54 after 7, trailing Bryan Hebert 64 and a ball after 7. Olson with 1 spare for the night. Hebert with 4 spares for the night so far. Hebert doing very well with the spares tonight. Hebert drops 6 on his spare. Olson washes out the left side. Hebert the 1, 2, 4, and 8. And he's a little bit too full. He takes out all but 1 pin. Hit it right, but I think it was just velocity and force that caused that spare conversion to fail. Bill Olson off the object, leaving the 4 horsemen right side. Both bowlers shooting for a 10 box. Bryan Hebert will take a 9. Bill Olson, meanwhile, for 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10, it's going to be a 9 as well. For 79 after 8 for Bryan Hebert and 63 after 8 for Bill Olson. 2 boxes to go before we conclude the second game for all bowlers. As a recap, Jonathan Hogan fell to Kevin Martel in the second game, 93 to 98. Bryan Hebert's at 79. Bill Olson's at 63 with 2 boxes to go. Stay tuned and thanks for watching. Bryan Hebert fires, play action on the pocket again. The 5-9. And Bill Olson on the pocket as well, dropping 7. Both first balls have been explosive. The 5-2-8 for Bill Olson. Bryan Hebert for a spare, and the piece of wood just spins safely away from the 5 pin. It looked like it was going to take them both out, but candle pin bowling, that's the only excuse I have for it. Bill Olson on the object pin, and whoa, don't hurt him now. He takes the 2 pin out, and it wiggles the 5 and the 8, but they don't go down. Hebert for his 10, he pins it out. Excellent pinning by Bryan Hebert, as if he was practicing or something. Bill Olson will also check 10. That's 89 after 9 for Bryan Hebert and 73 after 9 for Bill Olson. Olson with 1 spare for the night. Hebert with 4 spares for the night. Hebert up in the match by 31 and up in the game by 16 up at this point. Hebert just a little bit off to the right of the head pin, but he drops 7. That's generous. And Olson releases, drops 7 as well. Both bowlers missing the head pin, but both dropping 7 in different places. Olson with the 1-3-6. Hebert with the 1-2-7. Hebert will take a spare. That's another spare for Hebert. That's a lot of spares for Bryan tonight. Olson for his spare, and he just misses the 1-3 pocket, hits the 3-6 pocket instead, leaving only the head pin on the deck on lane 9. Shooting for a 10 box. Hebert has taken the second game. Olson will check that 10. Finishing the second game at 83. Hebert at 99 plus a ball. He's just piling on the match total now. We're still only at the end of game 2 of 5, so plenty of room for improvement for any bowler who's behind at this point. Hebert filling that spare. Taking a few more out for the road. It looks like 5, and he signals 5, so it's going to be 5. 104 for Bryan Hebert. Bryan Hebert with the highest game of anybody for this second game. 104 versus 93 for Jonathan Hogan, 98 for Kevin Martel, and 83 for Bill Olson. And pardon our dust real quick, our magic dust, while we walk down to the third game. Welcome to the third game. It's Kevin Martel on the right and Jonathan Hogan on the left. Martel will lead off. Kevin Martel is 4th place in D North Division 4 behind Bryan Hebert, Jonathan Hogan, and Bill Olson. He's 11th place in D North overall. Kevin Martel, his high single was 128 versus Chris Salmons in round 5, and he also threw his high series of 541 versus Chris Salmons in round 5, all in the same match. Jonathan Hogan versus the Diamond for a spare, and he leaves 1 pin. The Diamond wins again. Both bowlers not getting their spares. It would appear that Kevin Martel is shooting at the head pin for a 10 box, and he gets it. That's a 10 box for Kevin Martel to open up the third game. Jonathan Hogan, meanwhile, will also take a 10, hitting the wood to careen into the 10 pin for a 10. A lot of 10s. Kevin Martel has 20 strikes, 118 spares, and 144 10s for the season. His perfect box percentage is 35%. His seasonal total pins is 8,290. Jonathan Hogan has 39 strikes, 154 spares, and 159 10s. His perfect box percentage is 41%. And he has 8,665 seasonal total pins. Kevin Martel shooting at the 1-2-10 for a spare, and he hits it the right way, but the piece of wood that was formerly the 1 pin flies over the 10 pin, and he can't quite get it. Jonathan Hogan shooting at the 3-6-7-10, and he takes out only the 6. So not a whole lot to show for it there. Kevin Martel shooting for a 10 box. He'll take a 9 box. And Jonathan Hogan for 7, 8, 9, or 10, and he'll settle for an 8, somewhere in the middle. 18 after 2 for Jonathan Hogan, 19 after 2 for Kevin Martel. Jonathan Hogan trailing Martel in the game and the match, trailing the match by 19, trailing the game by 1. Kevin Martel on fire tonight. And Kevin Martel will take out a couple pins for the road, half Worcester plus the 10. And Jonathan Hogan will wash out the left side. 1, 5, 3, 6, 9, 10 for Jonathan Hogan. Martel against the 1, 3, 6, 4, 7, 9. He takes a few more for the road, leaving the 1, the 4, the 7, and the 9. Jonathan Hogan for his conversion of the washout. He leaves everything but the head pin. Martel, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 box. He'll take a 7 box. Jonathan Hogan, meanwhile, for a 10 box on the head pin, and he'll take a 9 for 27 after 3 for Jonathan Hogan and 26 after 3 for Kevin Martel. Kevin Martel on lane 10 at Lakeside Lanes. He fires to the right of the head pin, takes out the half Worcester plus a friend or 2. Jonathan Hogan dropping 6. Oops. Dropping 6. The 2, the 4, the 7, and the 9 pins on the deck. Kevin Martel converting the right side half Worcester to all but the 7. Jonathan Hogan. Take a spare. Kevin Martel will check 10. 37 plus a ball for Jonathan Hogan. 36 after 4 for Kevin Martel. Jonathan Hogan up in the game by 1 now. See, it only takes like a mark or two to really kind of claw back lost ground. That's Candlepin bowling for you. Jonathan Hogan on his spare, and he misses the head pin, washes it out. Washes out the left side and takes a few extra. Looks like it's going to be a 4 fill by my count. Kevin Martel with an ugly 5, 7, 10, 8. He takes out only the 5 pin. Got to grab a stick for a 79 or 10. Jonathan Hogan for his 10 box. Hoping he can take a few more things out, but excuse me, for a spare shot, and he's left with only the 3 pin. Martel for his 10 box. He's got to pick a stick and go for it. He'll take one out for an 8. Hogan for his 10. He'll take a 10. Now it's a 10. 51 after 5 for Jonathan Hogan and 44 after 5 for Kevin Martel. Jonathan Hogan for the first time, I believe, regaining some ground in terms of at least a half of a game. Martel still up in the total by 11. We're going to say hello once again to Bill Olson and Bryan Hebert. Bill Olson on the right in the dark black shirt. Bryan Hebert on the left, out of view, but he's in the navy blue shirt on lane 9. Bill Olson on lane 10. Fires to the left of the head pin, dropping 6, 1, 3, 9, 10. And Hebert to the left of the head pin as well. It's a left side washout. Bill Olson with a season average of 99.41. That's 12th best in D class. He has a home average of 97.5, and that's a spare for Bill Olson. Hebert attempting to match Bill Olson, but takes out everything but the 5, the 9, and the 10. Cleaning up, he'll take one of the 3 out for an 8 box. Anyways, Bill Olson with a home average of 97.5 and away average of 101.1. Bill Olson is overall 2nd place in D-Class Division 4 ahead of Kevin Martel and Bryan Hebert while trailing Jonathan Hogan. Bill Olson is number 2 in the wild card standings for D North. That's an 8. That's a 9 fill for for Bill Olson, excuse me, leaving only the 7 pin. Bryan Hebert drops 5, an awkward 5. 1, 2, 6, 7, 10. Bill Olson for the spare. Single pin spare. That's a 2nd spare in a row. All spares for Bill Olson and Bryan Hebert trying to will the ball back on target, but he can't. It's a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 for Bryan Hebert. And he'll make an attempt, but wow. He takes the head pin out, wiggles the 2, and will take a 6 box after all is said and done. Yikes. Anyways, that's 14 after 2 for Bryan Hebert and 29 plus a ball after 2 for Bill Olson. Bill Olson, overall 6th place in D North. Bill Olson has a high single of 132 versus Ray McAllister in round 4, and he threw a high series of 573 versus Alex Patton in round 6. Bill Olson has 25 strikes, 139 spares, and 165 tens. He has a 39% perfect box percentage, and that's a 6th fill for Bill Olson, leaving the right side 4 horsemen, the 1, the 3, the 6, and the 10. Bryan Hebert washing out the left side on the first ball, leaving the 1, 2, 5, 6, 9, and 10 pins. Olson versus the 4 horsemen right side. He runs him down, 3rd mark in a row, 3rd spare in a row for Bill Olson. Bryan Hebert washes out the right side now, leaving the center diamond to the 1, 2, 3, 5. Don Gillis had a line that once said the diamond wins again, and that holds true here. That's an 8 box for Bryan Hebert, 22 after 3. Compare that to 45 plus a ball after 3 for Bill Olson. Bill Olson has 8,450 seasonal total pins. This is the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, Class D North, is doubleheader season finale. And Bill Olson, ooh, that was a misfire. I saw the way he threw that ball. Held on to it for just a little too long. Washes out the right for a 3 fill. Or excuse me, a 2 fill, not a 3 fill. Can't count. And Bryan Hebert with a right side half Worcester. Bill Olson overcorrects a little bit, throws a little too full on the head pin, Leaves the 2 and the 4. Bryan Hebert trying to clean up that right side half Worcester. Almost converts it. Leaves the 6 and the 10. Olson fires for a 10 box. He'll take a 9. The ride had to end at some point. Hebert will take a 10. Hebert trailing by a fair amount at this point. 32 after 4 for Hebert and 56 after 4 for Olson. And suddenly, Bryan Hebert is trailing in the game by 24. He still has the total by 12, but it's diminishing at this point. Olson releases on lane 10. He's way too full on the head pin. I saw that just with my own eyes, and I thought that's going to be a spread eagle, and it is. And Bryan Hebert drops 9, a very nice methodical ball. Not too hard, not too soft. Drops everything but the 6. It's Bill Olson versus the eagle, the matchup you all wanted to see. And he'll take 2 more out for the road, leaving the 2, 3, 6, and 10. Bryan Hebert will take a spare. Single pin spare with wood, rather easy shot, easy layup. Olson for the 2, 3, 6, 10 for a 10 box. He'll take an 8 box. 64 after 5 for Olson, 42 plus a ball after 5 for Hebert. That's where we stand. We're going to be welcoming back Jonathan Hogan and Kevin Martel. Jonathan Hogan, 51 after 5. Kevin Martel, 44 after 5. At the official halfway point of this 5-game series, we're at 2.5 games complete and 2.5 games to go. That's Jonathan Hogan on your right in the green shirt. Very tall man. Fires to the right, washes out the right side, leaves the 4 horsemen left side. 1, 2, 4, 7. Kevin Martel, meanwhile, opens up with a miss of the head pin to the left, but leaves the 1, 3, 6, and 9 pins. Jonathan Hogan tries to run down the left side 4 horsemen and takes out the 2 of the 4 of them in the middle, leaving the 1 and the 7. Martel takes 2, leaves 2. 6, 9 on the deck. Both bowlers shooting for 10 boxes. Now Jonathan Hogan for the 10 box. He'll get halfway there for a 9. And Kevin Martel will settle for an 8. 60 after 6 for Jonathan Hogan. 52 after 6 for Kevin Martel. Jonathan Hogan, he has the 7th high single of 142 in the D class as of right now. He drops 6, 1, 3, 6, 8. Kevin Martel on the head pin drops everything but the 5, 7, and 9. Jonathan Hogan has the 5th most spares in D class at 154. He misses his spare there, by the way, leaving only the head pin. Jonathan Hogan has the 3rd most strikes in D class at 39. Kevin Martel misses his spare as well, leaving the 7. Jonathan Hogan has the 5th highest perfect box percentage in the D class at 41% right now. It's a 9 box for Jonathan Hogan and a 10 box for Kevin Martel. That puts Jonathan Hogan at 69 after 7 and Kevin Martel at 62 after 7. We had a bit of a pin setter mishap, and the tubes came down awkwardly and knocked down all the pins, and Jonathan Hogan yells, "Strike!" Wish it was that easy, but unfortunately, not so. And in case you missed it, here are some standings for the division at least. We have Jonathan Hogan at the top with Bill Olson knocking on the door with Bryan Hebert and Kevin Martel down in 3rd and 4th place. And then we have the wild card standings with Jonathan Hogan currently there and Bill Olson in the top in the wild card bracket. The other 2 bowlers down underneath. So Jonathan Hogan. Jonathan Hogan drops 6. The right side, 4 horsemen. Tries to run him down. He's just a little bit to the right of the orange pin head pin, leaving only the orange pin head pin. We have Kevin Martel versus the 5 and the 9 pins, and he misses the 5 and the 9 pins. Jonathan Hogan for the 10. He'll take the 10. And Kevin Martel for his 10. He'll miss it again for an 8 box. 70 after 8 for Kevin Martel. 79 after 8 for Jonathan Hogan. With 2 to go here at the Atlantic Camp and Singles Tour. Class D North doubleheader between Jonathan Hogan versus Kevin Martel and Bryan Hebert versus Bill Olson. Jonathan Hogan drops 6 and leaves a right side check mark, the 5, 6, 3, 10. Kevin Martel, meanwhile, drops 6 as well, leaving the 3, the 6, the 9, and the 10 for spares all around. Spare bids. Jonathan Hogan will get his spare and running down the check mark, checking the check mark. And Kevin Martel, he knew after he threw that ball that something was wrong. He takes 2 of the 4 pins out, leaving the 3 and the 9. Full shot on this, or a methodical hit on the 3-pin will take out everything. 3-pin goes, 9-pin stays. That's a 9 box for Kevin Martel. 89 plus a ball for Jonathan Hogan, 79 after 9 for Kevin Martel. Jonathan Hogan has 4 out of 17 matches bowled with a 520 total, over 520 for a total. He has bowled 13 out of 17 matches with a total over 500. Jonathan Hogan drops 5. That's a 5 fill on a spare. Spread eagle minus a pin. Kevin Martel washes out the right side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. Jonathan Hogan versus the broken eagle. He breaks the eagle a little bit more. Someone call PETA. Except for the 4, 6, 7. Kevin Martel drops all but the 1 and the 3. Both bowlers shooting for 10 boxes now. Hogan for the 10. He'll take 9. That's the end of his game. 103. Martel will take 9. That's the end of his game. 88. 103 to 88. Jonathan Hogan takes the 3rd game with a 3-game total of 284. Kevin Martel with a 3-game total of 287. Jonathan Hogan has 2 points. Kevin Martel has 4 points. Kevin Martel is ahead in the match by 3. Jonathan Hogan took the 3rd game by 15. Going to welcome back Bryan Hebert and Bill Olson now. Bryan Hebert up in the total by 14. Olson up in the game by 22. Hebert washes out to the left side, and that was on a spare, too. I believe that's a 3 fill. No, 2 fill. Excuse me. My 2s and 3s are not working tonight. My apologies. They will be spoken to after the match. Bryan Hebert trying to reconcile that 2 fill, and he kind of does. He leaves the 6, 9, 10. Bill Olson shooting for a spare on the 3, 6, 4, and 7, I believe. Takes 1 out, leaving the 4, 6, 7. Hebert tries to clean up, but he'll leave an 8. He'll take an 8, that is. Olson for a 7, 8, 9, or 10. He'll take 8 as well. And that puts Bryan Hebert at 52 after 6 and Bill Olson at 72 after 6. No bowler's thrown a strike so far tonight. It's been all spares. Bryan Hebert, the king of the spares so far. He's thrown 6. Everyone else has thrown 4. Bryan Hebert with a lemon drop on the right side. That's a 6-pin and the 6-pin only down. Bill Olson drops 7 almost immediately, 4, 6, 7. Hebert versus the lemon drop. Will he convert lemons into limes? No, he'll just punch straight out the center. 2, 3, 4, 7, 9, 10. Bill Olson calls an audible. Takes nothing out. Hebert, ooh, that was an awkward throw, but it's a 5 box for Hebert, and it's going to be a 9 box for Olson. 57 after 7 for Bryan Hebert. This is getting a little bit concerning for Bryan, who had a great start, but this is a point where you can kind of, this could be an inflection point in the match. Bill Olson's at 81 and 7. Bryan Hebert fires. He's off the headpin to the right, leaving the 1, 7, 10 with wood. Olson releases on lane 9, and he'll punch out the left side with a half Worcester. Bryan Hebert has the 1, 7, 10, known as this WCVB Channel 5 high-low jack, but there is some wood around. Let's see if he takes it out. And he takes out everything but the headpin, thanks to the wood. Olson on the left side, half Worcester conversion, and he'll not convert much. He'll take the 4 and the 7 to church. Hebert will take a 9. Olson trying to salvage something out of this, and oh boy, that's a 4 box for Olson. That might have been the break that Bryan Hebert possibly could utilize, although the gap is still fairly wide. That's 85 after 8 for Bill Olson, and 66 after 8 for Bryan Hebert. Hebert on the head pin. 8 drop, favorable drop. 9 drop, pin falls late. 3 pin is all that's left. Olson now, he's off the head pin to the right. Takes some pins out in the back row and leaves everything else. Hebert for a single pin spare. Will he add to his spare count for the night? Let's see what happens. No. He's off to the left of that. Off to the left of the 3 pin. Doesn't get it. Olson for his spare attempt on the head pin, and will the 5 go? It goes slowly and quietly. That's a spare for Olson. Hebert will take a 9. Olson's back on track now. He's at 95 plus a ball after 9. Hebert at 75 after 9. You are watching the Atlantic Hamilton Singles Tour, this Class D for Destruction doubleheader in Division 4 for these 4 bowlers. Their final match of the regular season. Bryan Hebert fires and he drops a few. Bill Olson also drops a few for a 4 fill on a spare. Bryan Hebert trying to convert his awkward bouquet of pins into a spare, but takes all but 1, the head pin. Once again, Bill Olson, he will reconcile that 4 fill with another spare. His 5th mark of the game. Hebert will check 10. Bill Olson has taken the 3rd game here. Hebert will conclude with an 85. Bill Olson at 109 plus a ball. Olson trying to regain the total. He's still down by 12 in the match, but he takes the game by 24 plus this ball, whatever it ends up being. And he takes 5. On the fill, Bill Olson will finish with 114. So Bill Olson still trailing in the match by 7, but handily takes the 3rd game by 29. That's a 3-game total of 292 for Bryan Hebert and a 3-game total of 285 for Bill Olson. That's the end of the 3rd game. Let's move to the 4th game now. Let's not dwell on anything. I know Bryan Hebert certainly does not want to. Sorry, Bryan. Kevin Martel starting up on lane 10. He'll bowl first. He fires. And he washes out the right side with 2 pins down. 6 and the 10 gone. Jonathan Hogan washes out the left side. The 4 and the 7. Very symmetrical leaves here at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Kevin Martel fires. He's off to the left of the head pin, the 1-3-7-9. Jonathan Hogan trying to match that. His leaves a little better. Will the 5-pin go last? No, it will not. No spare for either bowler. Kevin Martel for the 10 box trying to clean up. It'll be a 6 box for Kevin Martel. Jonathan Hogan versus the 5-pin. For a 10, he'll take that 10. Kevin Martel, 12 of 17 of his matches have totaled over 480. In the past 5 matches, Kevin Martel has taken 39 points. That's plus 13 from the previous 5. That's definite improvement, and we've seen that tonight from Kevin Martel. He drops 6, 1-7-8-10. Jonathan Hogan drops all but the 3 and the 9. The die is cast for the spare leaves here. Kevin Martel on the pocket and the object pin knows the right way to hit it, but he leaves the 7 pin. Just the flying wood didn't do him any favors. Jonathan Hogan will take his spare. Nice full shot. Kevin Martel will take a 9. $20 plus a ball for Jonathan Hogan. 15 after 2 for Kevin Martel. Kevin Martel, 7 out of his past 17 matches, he's had 2 strikes. He has a perfect box percentage. 37% went away. That's plus 8 compared to home, so that's favorable for Kevin Martel tonight. Both bowlers dropping 7, except for Jonathan Hogan, who had a late falling pin who dropped 8. 1-2 for Jonathan Hogan. 3-4-6 for Kevin Martel. Martel with the right idea, but can't make the 4 pin come out to play. Jonathan Hogan versus the 1-2. Will it go? Nope, not on the object, and the piece of wood doesn't spin around to take the head pin. Both bowlers for a 9 or 10 box. Kevin Martel has 10 strikes at home and 10 strikes while away. Kevin Martel's past 5 home match wins and losses has been 45 and 25. Both bowlers taking 9 box. Jonathan Hogan with that spare 8-9. 37 after 3 for Jonathan Hogan and 24 after 3 for Kevin Martel. Kevin Martel fires and drops 6. 1-3-6-10. Right side, 4 horsemen. Jonathan Hogan on the pocket. He is left with the 2, the 7, the 8, and the 10 pins. Jonathan Hogan's leave is a little bit more difficult. Kevin Martel, on average, takes 8.125 points per home match and 5 points per away match. Kevin Martel missing a spare, and Jonathan Hogan also missing a spare. Both have 3 up, 7 down. Martel on a salvage mission here. He'll take one more out for an 8. Hogan will also take one out for an 8. 45 after 4 for Hogan and 32 after 4 for Martel. To just about finish the first half of the 4th game for these two bowlers. Their final match of, I believe, is everyone's final match of the season. Kevin Martel with a left side half Worcester. Jonathan Hogan dropping 6-1, 3, 6, 7. Martel fires, tries to get something out of that left side half Worcester, but doesn't get anything out of it. Jonathan Hogan with a favorable spare leave. Will he get it? Takes out everything but the object pin. Miss that object pin and suffer for it. Martel for a 10-box salvage mission. Hopefully he gets something. He'll take a 6. Hogan will take a 9. 54 after 5 for Hogan. 38 after 5 for Martel. This is the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, Class D North. Good as always to have you along with us. I'm Steve Kelly, and this is a doubleheader match between Jonathan Hogan, Kevin Martel, Bryan Hebert, and Bill Olson. We have Bryan Hebert and Bill Olson taking the approaches for the first time of the 4th game. Bill Olson on lane 10, Bryan Hebert on lane 9. Bill Olson has 9 of 17 matches this season with a double-digit take-home. Bill Olson dropping 7, Bryan Hebert dropping 6. Bill Olson has the 3rd high series in the D class at 573. Bill Olson has the 9th most 10s in the D class at 165. No spare for Bill Olson. Bill Olson has 8 of 17 games over 500. Bill Olson's average has been consistently hovering around 100 since week 6. Bill Olson's past 5 home matches, wins and losses, has been 40 and 30 respectively. Both bowlers will take a 9-box to open up the 4th game. Olson fires on the head pin, drops 9, leaving the 10 pin only. Hebert off to the left of the head pin still falling. Diamond center plus 10. 5 up, 5 down. Bill Olson versus the 10 pin, and he'll take that 10 pin home for a spare. Bryan Hebert versus the center diamond. The center diamond fights back. Half of it still standing. No spare for Bryan Hebert. 7, 8, 9, or 10 box. For Bryan Hebert on lane 9 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire, and he gently nudges down 2 of those 3 pins. It looks like it's going to remain a 9-box. Making sure the wood is settled, and yes, that's going to be a 9-box for Bryan Hebert. Got to pause for pin clear before we reset. Bryan Hebert sits at 18 after 2. Bill Olson at 19 plus a ball. After 2, Bryan Hebert up in the total by 6. Bill Olson up in the game by 1 plus a ball. Bill Olson slowly clawing back that match lead that Bryan Hebert took early. The pacing has slightly shifted in Bill Olson's favor in these later games here. Bill Olson recently faced Ed Sargent at Leda Lanes in round 11. He took 10 points to Ed's 4 with a 499 series. He averaged 99.6 with 0 strikes, 11 spares, and 14 tens. Bill Olson with a 2 fill with a right side half Worcester. That's rough, and Bryan Hebert washes out the left side. Bill Olson trying to make something out of that half Worcester conversion, but he leaves the 7 pin. Bryan Hebert's washout remains a washout. He's got just the 4 horseman right side to contend with now. Bill Olson takes a 10 for the road. Hebert will take a 7 for the road. 25 after 3 for Bryan Hebert and 31 after 3 For Bill Olson, that's your score update provided by the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour and Candlepin Bowling Network. I'm Steve Kelly. Good as always to have you along, whether you're watching on YouTube Live or Facebook. Wherever it is, whether live or 6 months from now, doesn't matter to me. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it anyway. Bill Olson dropping, I think it's 3 this time. Yes, it is 3 this time. Bryan Hebert dropping 6. It's a right side washout for Bill Olson. Like a rain shower. Leaves everything but the 1 and the 3. Bryan Hebert with a full shot. He'll take a spare. First spare in a while for Bryan Hebert. 35 plus a ball after 4. Bill Olson for his 10 box, and he'll take a 10. Bill Olson at 41 after 4. Bryan Hebert at 35 plus a ball after 4. With 1 to go before they sit. About to finish halfway through the 4th game. Bill Olson winds up in the pitch. 1, 3, 6, 9, 4, 7. Bryan Hebert filling his spare. It's got to be good. And it is good. It's a 7 fill. 3, 5, 10. Olson for the spare conversion. And, well, no spare. Takes a few out. Bryan Hebert for a double spare, and he gets that double spare. 52 plus a ball for Bryan Hebert. Bill Olson, salvage mission for a 10 box. 6 minimum, 10 maximum, and it's going to be a 6. Bryan Hebert suddenly come back alive. 52 plus a ball after 5. Bryan Hebert, the leader in marks tonight at 8 spares. Bill Olson at 47 after 5. And we welcome back Jonathan Hogan and Kevin Martel to the approaches of Lakeside Lanes. That's Jonathan Hogan on the right and Kevin Martel on the left. What more can I tell you about Jonathan Hogan? Well, first of all, he just hit the 7 pin and nothing else. Kevin Martel, that's a strike. That's the first strike for anybody of the match tonight. I knew Kevin Martel would have it in him. That's 48 plus a ball, plus 2 balls for Kevin Martel. Jonathan Hogan taking a few more out for an 8, 9, or 10 box. And that looks like that is going to be the 2 and the 4 pins for Jonathan Hogan specifically. He'll take a 9 box. We'll see if Kevin Martel can seize this opportunity. He just took a strike. 48 plus a fill in the 6th. In the past 5 matches, Jonathan Hogan has taken 34 points. That's a dip of 16 from the previous 5. 13 out of his 17 matches has included 2 or more strikes total. And he drops 5 off the bat. 4 horsemen right side plus the 8. Kevin Martel's first strike fill ball is a 6. 1, 3, 6, 8. Jonathan Hogan having some trouble on that release. Takes out only the 10. Kevin Martel on the head pin, and oh my goodness, he got ripped off. That's a 7 fill total for Kevin Martel. 55 and 6 after all said and done. And Jonathan Hogan trying to reconcile. He'll take a 9 box. 7, 8, 9, or 10 for Martel, and he'll take a 9 box as well. 72 after 7 for Jonathan Hogan. 64 after 7 for Kevin Martel. Kevin Martel slowly regaining ground, but he definitely is going to need a mark and a good fill to continue that march against Jonathan Hogan. Jonathan Hogan on lane 10, a little bit too full on the head pin, dropping 6. 4, 3, 6, 7, I believe. And we have Kevin Martel with the 2, 4, 6, 7, I believe, if these eyes don't deceive me. Jonathan Hogan will take 1 more pin out. And Kevin Martel will take 2 more out. Jonathan Hogan versus the 3, the 4, and the 7 pins for a 10. And Kevin Martel versus the 2 and the 6 for a 10. And Jonathan Hogan will take an 8 box. Kevin Martel will take a 9 box. 80 after 8 for Jonathan Hogan. 73 after 8 for Kevin Martel. Jonathan Hogan retains the total by 4 and the game by 7. Hogan on lane 10, he fires the pitch. He's off to the left. Takes out a variety of pins. Nice grab bag. Oops. And Martel, meanwhile, the 1, the 2, the 7, 8, 9, 10. It's a Greek church. Martel takes 1 more out. Jonathan Hogan takes one more out. Martel takes a few more out. Demolishes the Greek church a little bit more for the 2 and the 7. Jonathan Hogan, remedial ball. It looks like it's going to be an 8 box if that 5 pin doesn't fall. It's going to be an 8 box for Hogan and a 10 box for Martel. And at this point, again, Kevin Martel is slowly clawing the lead back in this game. 83 for Martel and 88 for Jonathan Hogan. It might come down to a mark or a misfire by Jonathan Hogan. We'll see. Jonathan Hogan releases, and it's a left side half Worcester. Ouch. Martel, he fires. He's on the head pin. He drops 7. He drops 8. He drops 9. The 2 pin is all that's left. That might have been, that potentially could be the break he needs. Jonathan Hogan needs to convert this left side half Worcester to stay competitive. Wild pitch to the right. 1, 3, 5, 4, 7 is what he's left to contend with. Kevin Martel for a single pin spare, and oh no. He misses it. He misses it to the right. Not sure how that's going to shake out now. Let's see Jonathan Hogan, and he woof, takes out just the head pin, orange pin. So Jonathan Hogan will take a 6 box. That will conclude him at 94, and Kevin Martel will take a 10. And he'll take 93. Oh my goodness, it was just a 1 pin difference after all was said and done. Jonathan Hogan with 94, Kevin Martel with 93. A valiant effort by Kevin Martel, but he just falls by 1. It's all about that 1 pin, folks, and it was literally the one that was standing that would have been the tie. And if he had gotten it, he would have had the fill, and you know the rest. Bryan Hebert filling a spare on lane 10. And, oh my goodness, that's a 2 fill. Bryan Hebert having some struggles with fills. I know this is a bit of something he has to work on for sure. Bill Olson with a left side lemon drop. Takes out the 4 and the 4 only. Hebert doesn't convert to the spare.
That's what happens on his name.
Olson takes a few more out for the road. Leaves the 1, the 2, the 5, the 9, the 8, and the 9. Hebert for an 8, 9, or 10. He'll take an 8 box. Olson for a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 box. He pitches, and he'll actually take out the bouquet for a 10. 57 after 6 for Olson, 62 after 6 for Hebert. Appreciate you watching this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match, this doubleheader D-Class, Class D for Destruction at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Bryan Hebert dropping 6, leaving the 4 horsemen left side. Bill Olson releases on lane 9, pitches to the left of the head pin, dropping 6. It's a 1, 3, 8, 9 for Olson. Hebert is off to the left of the 4 horsemen, taking out the 7 and the 7 only. Olson on the pocket, takes out everything but the 9 pin. Hebert versus the 1, 2, 4, and I heard a bounce when you released that. It sails off to the right. Must have hit the foul line or something. That ball did not go where he wanted it to go. Olson will take a 9, Hebert will take a 7. 69 after 7 for Bryan Hebert. 66 after 7 for Bill Olson. Difference of 3 between our 2 bowlers. And Hebert, again, off to the right. Takes out only the 10 pin. Olson on the head pin on the pocket does the opposite, drops all but the 7 pin. That's Hebert versus 9 pins. He takes a few more out, washes out the right side. A shallow washout. Olson will take a spare. A late game spare. Oops, not a strike, a spare. And Hebert takes a few more out for what appears to be, I think, a 6 box? Nope, my mistake, a 5. Sorry, I was keying in the spare and didn't see the pins. I was just looking up at the compy score to verify that. Hebert on the head pin, on the pocket, and much better ball. Drops 9, leaving the 10. Olson filling a spare. Doesn't connect with the pocket, but drops 6. So that's a solid 16 for Olson. A sweet 16, you might call it. 82 after 8 for Olson. Hebert for a spare. He gets a spare. Much needed. His 3rd spare of the game. 84 plus a ball for Hebert. Olson, meanwhile, the 1, 3, 6, and 9 pins. And, well, he takes none of those. So the same pins are on the deck. Olson for a 10 box, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. Tie of this match is very close for these two bowlers. We'll see who gets washed out to sea. That's an 8 box for Olson, 90 after 9. Hebert not much far behind him, 84 plus a ball after 9 with that spare. Competitive matches, folks. Competitive matches. Class D, folks. Class D. Class D for demolition. Hebert on his spare, and that looks like a 2. Again, a right side washout. He seems to be really favoring that right side on some of these first balls. And Olson drops 7. Hebert for the spare conversion. Nearly goes. Wow, that would have been a miraculous conversion. But it leaves Hebert leaves one on the deck, and Olson for his spare, and he can't believe it. He leaves the 6 pin. Hebert for a 9 or a 10. He'll take 10. Olson for a 9 or a 10. Hebert's at 96. Olson, it's a 9, but it's enough. He'll take a 99. He'll take the 4th game. 2 points for Bill Olson. Hebert at 4. Olson at 4. Martel at 4. Hogan at 4. Actually, everyone is tied, and the total is very close between everyone. This is a competitive match, and it's very close in terms of the total and the points. So stay tuned, folks. We have a game. That means the 5th game is super important. The 5th game is going to be worth 6 points for a lot of our bowlers if it shakes out correctly, unless we have some ties or really close outcomes. So anyways, our bowlers are wasting no time here. I'm yakking up here. So 50... Oops, excuse me. Trying to talk and do things at the same time. So 4-game total of 378 for Jonathan Hogan, 4-game total of 380 for Kevin Martel, 4-game total of 388 for Bryan Hebert, and a 4-game total of 384 for Bill Olson. All 4 bowlers in the same division are bowling almost equally tonight. Anyways, where are we? Kevin Martel looking at 7, 8, 9, or 10, and Jonathan Hogan with a 7-10 split with 1 piece of wood in the center. Kevin Martel will take 9. Hogan will take an 8. And look at that, we're all caught up. 8 after 1 for Hogan, 9 after 1 for Martel. Kevin Martel most recently faced Bill Olson in round 17 at Lakeside Lanes. He took 10 points with a 487 series, 2 strikes, 6 spares, and 11 tens. 3 out of those 5 games were over 100 for Kevin Martel. And he takes out a half Worcester plus a friend on the left side, and Jonathan Hogan washes out the right side. Martel on the pocket. That's a spare. Excellent, excellent conversion by Kevin Martel. Jonathan Hogan, he's on the pocket as well, but a little bit off to the right to the point where it caused an impact that wasn't favorable. He's left with the 4 horseman left side, the 1, 2, 4, 7 for a 10 box for Jonathan Hogan on lane 9. And he'll get 75% of the way there. He'll take a 9 box, 17 after 2 for Jonathan Hogan, and 19 plus a ball for Kevin Martel. Appreciate you watching this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match on Candlepin Bowling Network and the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour Facebook page simulcast tonight. Kevin Martel drops 5. Left side diamond plus the 10 for 24 after 2. Jonathan Hogan dropping 7. Kevin Martel on the diamond, and the diamond wins again. The diamond has been winning a lot tonight. The 8 and the 10. Jonathan Hogan with a frustrated sigh as he takes out only the 7 pin, leaving the 1 and the 2. Kevin Martel against the 8 and the 10. The orange 8 and the white 10. And he'll get it. He'll play the wood and he'll take it. Kevin Martel will take a 10 box. Jonathan Hogan for an 8, 9, or 10, and he's a little bit off course for an 8 box. 25 after 3 for Jonathan Hogan, 34 after 3 for Kevin Martel. What more can I tell you about Jonathan Hogan? Jonathan Hogan averages 2.29 strikes per match, 9.05 spares per match, and 9.35 tens per match. Jonathan Hogan averages 8.90 points per home match and 9.13 points per away match in his past 5 away matches In his past 5 away matches, he's had 46 and 24 wins and losses, respectively. Kevin Martel for a spare, and he can't convert. He leaves us the 5 and the 9. Jonathan Hogan against the 1, the 5, the 2, and the 9, and he leaves us only the 1. Both bowlers for 10 boxes now. 8, 9, or 10 for Kevin Martel, 9 or 10 for Jonathan Hogan. Martel pitches, takes the 10. Jonathan Hogan, he pitches, he takes the 10. Makes my job easy. That's 2 10s for both bowlers. That's 35 after 4 for Jonathan Hogan, and 44 after 4 for Kevin Martel. Most recently, Jonathan Hogan faced Bryan Hebert in round 17 at Academy Lanes in Haverhill, Massachusetts. I also covered that match recently. Jonathan Hogan took 6 points with a 448 series. He struggled a bit. 4 of those 5 games were under 100. He had 1 strike, 4 spares, and 7 tens. Kevin Martel for the spare. After an awkward setup, he leaves all but the 10 pin, and Jonathan Hogan against the 1-2-4 takes out the 2 and only the 2. Both bowlers for a 10. Kevin Martel has the 10 pin and an awkward piece of wood half in and half out of the gutter. Might be deceptive. He's going to play it though, and he doesn't take the pin out. 9 boxes all around for both bowlers. 44 after 5 for Jonathan Hogan. 53 after 5 for Kevin Martel. That's the end. That's their final first half of this entire match. This is the 5th and final game. We welcome Bryan Hebert and Bill Olson back to the approaches for their final first half. For tonight, at least. And the season, for that matter. This is the final match for several of our bowlers tonight, I believe, if not all 4. Don't quote me on that. Bill Olson dropping 6, Bryan Hebert dropping 7. Bill Olson with a left side inverted check mark. 2, 4, 5, 7. And he misses all of it. Hebert versus the 1, 3, 10. He takes out just the 10. Some wood around. Didn't really help much. Olson for 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. He'll take an 8. Hebert will also take an 8. Very competitive matches tonight. Currently, Kevin Martel is up in the total by 11 and up in the game by 9. Bryan Hebert up in the total by 4, and they're tied in the game. And this 5th game, since all of our bowlers are so close to one another in their respective matchups, this is effectively a 6-point string, because it will factor in the total. Bill Olson dropping 8, the 4 and the 10. Hebert with a spread eagle, dropping 4. Olson for the spare, he handily gets it. Hebert for his spread eagle conversion, admittedly difficult, very difficult shot to get, especially without any wood. Takes out 2, leaves 4. And Hebert for the 10 box, and he'll do the best he can with it. He'll take an 8 box. Doesn't miss anything, but doesn't take everything out either. Hebert's at 16 after 2. Bill Olson's at 18 plus a ball after 2. Bryan Hebert with a season average of 95.7 and a home average of 96.9. Away average of 94.4. Bryan Hebert is 3rd in D North Division 4 behind Kevin Martel, Bill Olson, and Jonathan Hogan. He's 10th place in the D North wild card position overall, and that looks like a 2-fill for Bill Olson. Rough 2-fill. Hebert drops 5, leaving the 4 horse on the left side and the 10. Bryan Hebert's high single is 128 against Paul Kravitz in round 11. His high series 529 against Bill Olson the last time they fought in round 3. Bryan Hebert has 23 strikes, 136 spares, and 120 tens. He has a 33% perfect box percentage and 8,138 seasonal total pins. Bill Olson will take a 9 box, leaving the 7, and Bryan Hebert will chop out the last pin on the deck for a 10 box. 26 after 3 for Bryan Hebert. And 29 after 3 for Bill Olson. Bryan Hebert, it's often feast or famine. Sometimes he takes double-digit points, 10 to 12 in a match. Otherwise, he takes between 0 and 4. Bill Olson dropping 6. Bryan Hebert to the right of the head pin and takes out 3. Bryan Hebert has 5 of 17 matches over 500, 9 of 17 matches over 480. In the past 5 matches, Bryan Hebert has improved substantially with 36 points earned. That's plus 6 compared to the previous 5. Bryan Hebert tries to convert the spare and can't quite take them all out, as neither can Bill Olson. Bill Olson versus the 1-3-6. He'll take him out for a 10. Bryan Hebert for an 8-9 or 10. And he'll also take a 10. Both bowlers taking 10s. 36 after 4 for Bryan Hebert. 39 after 4 for Bill Olson. Bryan Hebert averages 1.35 strikes per match, 8 spares per match, and 7.06 tens per match. He takes on average 6 points per home match and 7 points per away match. Bill Olson dropping 9, and he just wants a strike. Poor guy. Drops all but the 5. Bryan Hebert on the pocket as well. He drops 7, the 5-6-10. In the past 5 away matches, Bryan Hebert has gone 36 and 34. Most recently, Bryan Hebert faced Jonathan Hogan at Academy Lanes in round 17, just like I mentioned with Jonathan Hogan earlier. He took 8 points with a 453 series with 1 strike, 4 spares, and 9 tens. Neither bowler taking their spares. Bill Olson missed the second, get the third. I think you know the rest of the lyrics. And Bryan Hebert will take a stick out for a 9. And these bowlers are still close together. Bryan Hebert at 45 after 5. Bill Olson at 49 after 5. And the total is even for Bill Olson and Bryan Hebert. And that's crazy. Hogan and Martel is also close, just a little bit more distant compared to Hebert and Olson. Hebert currently stands at 6 points. Olson currently stands at 8 points. Hogan currently stands at 4 points. Martel currently stands at 10 points, not factoring in the 5th game, not factoring in the total. Neither bowler getting spares here. And what do we even have? Hogan's just got a pile of pins out there. He's shooting for a 10 box. And that's going to be a 7 for Hogan. Martel, 7, 8, 9, or 10. He'll take an 8. 51 after 6 for Jonathan Hogan. 61 after 6 for Kevin Martel. This is a very close match. I appreciate you for sticking it out and watching this with me. Wherever you are, however you're watching this, is appreciated. This Class D North doubleheader in the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. I'm Steve Kelly back here. That's Jonathan Hogan down there, and that's Kevin Martel to the left over there. Jonathan Hogan drops 7. Kevin Martel drops 6. Jonathan Hogan versus the triangle, the 2-4-5. And the 2-4-5 fall for a spare for Jonathan Hogan. Much needed spare in this close match. Martel misses his 4 horsemen right side, leaving the head 4 horsemen, the head pin. The general left on the deck. The captain always goes down with the ship, they say. Kevin Martel misses the captain. He'll take a 9. 70 after 7 for Kevin Martel. And 61 plus a ball after 7 for Jonathan Hogan. This might be the break Jonathan Hogan needs to reclaim the 11-match deficit and the 9-game deficit. Jonathan Hogan filling a spare ball. This needs to be good, and oh no. Well, keeping it competitive with that right side half Worcester 2 fill. Kevin Martel dropping 7-1-3-7 on lane 9. Difficult spare leave for Jonathan Hogan. Let's see if he can convert. And he's not on the pocket. Takes a few out. Pin still falling. Leaves the 1 and the 10. Kevin Martel on the 1-3-7. Takes out just the 1. Leaving the 3 and the 7. Hogan for the 10 box. He'll take an 8 box. Martel, 8, 9, or 10. He'll take a 9. 71 after 8 for Hogan. 79 after 8 for Martel. Appreciate you watching. Again, I know I sound like a broken record, but we're having a fantastic time at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire watching this doubleheader. I hope you are as well. I hope this broadcast finds you well. Everyone involved here, from the bowlers to the staff you can't see all around me, I appreciate your viewership and interest in this live stream, as well as Candlepin Bowling as a whole. And hey, if you like this, if you think this is fun, go to candlepin.org and click Go Bowling. Check to see if there's a bowling center near you, and check it out and go bowling for yourself to see if you think you can bowl better than the pros here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. let's see. That's a 10 box for Kevin Martel and a 9 box for Jonathan Hogan. That should put, a spare for Kevin Martel. Sorry, that's on me for not paying attention. Just matching the compy score. 80 after 9 for Jonathan Hogan. 89 plus a ball for Kevin Martel. But again, yes, go to candlepin.org, click Go Bowling to find your nearest center if you'd like to give you this unique regional sport a try. Jonathan Hogan releases off to the left of the head pin, takes out a smattering of pins, a low number though. Kevin Martel filling a spare, that could be huge. That was a spare fill. That's a 7 fill in the spare, 96 after 9. Leaving the 4, the 7, and the 8. Jonathan Hogan trying to get another spare, and the pins just dance around lightly. 5, 7, 10, 8 for Jonathan Hogan. Kevin Martel trying to lock it up, but he can't. At least not yet. Takes out the 4 and the 4 only. Hogan for the 10 box. He'll take an 8. 88. Kevin Martel will take the 5th game. That's a 10 box, and I think that will be 6 points for Kevin Martel. 106 to 88. Kevin Martel takes the 5th game. 5-game total of 466 for Jonathan Hogan. 5-game total of 488 for Kevin Martel. That's the 5th game for Kevin Martel and the 5th and the match total for Kevin Martel. Kevin Martel takes 10 points to Jonathan Hogan's 4. Final point distribution for those two bowlers. Bryan Hebert, meanwhile, we're wasting no time here. Bryan Hebert fires straight down the center. Takes a 4-pin spread eagle. Jonathan Hogan, not Jonathan Hogan, Bill Olson on lane 9. Takes out a couple pins, takes out 7. Neither bowler on a fill for a spare. Bill Olson has been a great help this season in giving me feedback as well as tips and tricks on small improvements to make during this broadcast, so many thanks to Bill for that. Bryan Hebert from Ringe, New Hampshire. It looks like that. It's going to be a 5 box for Bryan Hebert and a 9 box for Bill Olson. The differential in these boxes is huge at this late stage of the game. But anyways, before we go, I just want to give a couple special thanks to our ACST League Commissioner Danny Finn, our ACST stats and numbers crunched by Micah Imperato, making me look super smart when I'm actually not. Bryan Hebert for statistical graphics used in this broadcast. The staff at Lakeside Lanes, I know Bobby Greco is just literally feet away from me. And you, everybody out there, if you're watching, thank you for watching. I appreciate you watching. Appreciate your interest in Candlepin Bowling, kind of bringing this sport back alive in its twilight years here. Greatly appreciate it, and all the bowlers here appreciate it as well. And neither bowler getting spares here. We have Bryan Hebert versus the 247, Bill Olson versus the 5-7. 7 box for Bryan Hebert. Bill Olson for an 8, 9, or 10, and it'll be a 9. That's 57 after 7 for Bryan Hebert and 67 after 7 for Bill Olson. And that is confirmed. And again, Jonathan Hogan fell to Kevin Martel 88 to 106, and Kevin Martel takes the match 10 to 4. Bryan Hebert on the pocket drops 7, a wiggly 7. The 6 is deciding if it wants to stay or go. Is going to stay. Bill Olson to the right of the pocket drops 6, 1, 7, 10, 2. Bryan Hebert versus the 6, 9, 10. Just barely stays on the lane with that ball, just straddling the line between lane and gutter, but he takes a 10 pin out and nothing else. Olson, will he get it? He will get a spare, and that might be big news for Bill Olson. Bryan Hebert will take an 8. Bill Olson's at 77 plus a ball. Bryan Hebert's at 65 plus a ball. And Bill Olson is currently ahead in the total by 8 and ahead in the game by 12. Bill Olson pulling ahead. Bryan Hebert needs marks in these final 2 boxes to stay alive for the 6-point match. 6-point game, that is, and he drops 9 right off the bat. That was a good attempt. Leaves all but the 6-pin. Bill Olson filling a spare with 5. 4 horsemen right side plus the 8-pin. 82 after 8 for Bill Olson now. Bryan Hebert. Oh, sorry, I switched the wrong camera by mistake, but long story short, that's a much-needed spare by Bryan Hebert. Again, that's totally on me. I clicked the wrong button. It was a single-pin spare on the 6-pin, and Bryan Hebert took it out. Bill Olson for the right side 4 horsemen and the 8-pin. Second ball spare, no go. 1, 3, 6, 10, 8. He goes for the 10 box, and he'll take 9. Waited for that last pin to fall. So 91 and 9 for Bill Olson, and 75 plus a ball for Bryan Hebert. It's time to make the donuts for Bryan Hebert. Needs a good fill, and oh no. That release was off to the right. It's a 2 fill. 2 fill. 77 after 9 for Bryan Hebert. I have a feeling that's basically the end right there. Bill Olson drops 2 on the left, washes out 2. Bryan Hebert, no spare. That's going to be 6 points for Bill Olson. I think mathematically at this point it is not possible. Bryan Hebert versus 1 and 3. Bill Olson taking a few more for the road. No spare for either bowler. Bryan Hebert will take an 8. 85 for a 5-game total of 473 for Bryan Hebert. Bill Olson already above that at 475 plus whatever this ends up being. Congratulations to Bill Olson. Bill Olson will take the 9. And that will be it. That's the end. Bill Olson will finish with an even 100. 5-game total for Bill Olson, 484. Bill Olson taking 10. Bryan Hebert taking 4. Martel taking 10. Hogan taking 4. Our winners tonight, Bill Olson and Kevin Martel. And let's bring up the final stats here and to show you some of the point differentials and some other miscellaneous stats. So tonight's Jonathan Hogan goes from 153 and 85 to 157 and 95. Kevin Martel goes from 110 and 128 to 120 and 132. Bryan Hebert will move from 110 and 128 to 114 and 138. Bill Olson will move from 138 and 100 to 148 and 104. And that should be it from us at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Thanks for watching. Hope this was a pleasant experience for you. I've been Steve Kelly. If you want to see more, strike, comment, and subscribe. Ring that bell on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour page on Facebook, Candlepin Bowling Network on both Facebook and YouTube, Candlepin Corner on YouTube, Alley Chat on Facebook, the Candlepin Bowling channel on YouTube, where all kinds of other video streams and productions are regularly posted in addition to results and statistics. Great to have you along once again, and hope you enjoyed this program. I've been Steve Kelly, and for Kevin Martel, Bryan Hebert, Bill Olson, and Jonathan Hogan, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening or whatever day or time or year or whenever it is. Have a great one, everyone.